Good evening. Welcome for another episode of Nerds of the North. Well, I've been waiting a long time for this. I know the movie has come out a couple of weeks earlier. I wasn't able to pick it up until now because I couldn't actually find the package that I wanted to get anywhere in my town. And work schedules being what they were, I didn't have time to make it down to big old Toronto to find it. So, finally in my local mall, this arrived. And I have watched it. I've watched the documentaries. It's time to give you my opinions of Peter Jackson's The Hobbit Extended Edition. Now, I didn't watch the 3D. I don't own a 3D TV. What I did watch was the Blu-ray disc that came with this and the documentaries. 9 hours of additional documentary footage, on top of the fact that they've extended The Hobbit by 13 minutes. Now, the movie is fantastic. Right from the very beginning, there's extended scenes, there's extended episodes. You see that there's now strife between the dwarves of Erebor and the Thranduil elves long before the dragon actually shows up. So that was kind of interesting. It makes me excited to see what's going to be happening in Desolation of Smaug next week when it airs. We also have, as I was kind of hoping for, they've added 2 new songs. We do get a song sung by the Goblin King, and we get another song sung by the dwarves in Rivendell. Fantastic. The book was popular with all its songs in it. I'm glad to see that they got put back into the movies. A lot of people are going to complain about that. I'm not one of them. I truly do like the songs in The Hobbit. The songs belong in The Hobbit, if that makes any sense. Now, transfer-wise, it's the same as the old Blu-ray. It's fantastic quality. It looks absolutely beautiful. Now, the 3D version they actually have on 2 separate Blu-rays, making this a 5-disc set. And for me, having to store them in my binder, usually I would file these under H with Hobbit, where I had the original version of Hobbit sat. Now that the extended edition has come in, it's time to replace that edition out of my collection and put this in. But with it being the extended edition, all these discs, all 5 of them, now have the fantastic Alan Lee drawing artwork on the discs. And they seem really out of place when I have them sitting in my binder when they're not paired off with the rest of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So I decided to break my alphabetical order for this instance and file them chronologically. So Hobbit appears in my binder now after Return of the King. They seamlessly fit there. Especially with the appendices that they had began with the Lord of the Rings set. Each film had 2 different appendice discs. Well, Hobbit in 3D now has appendices 7 and appendice 8. So they continued that trend. And it's fantastic that they have them in there. I was shocked at the 9-hour runtime of the documentaries. I know the other films were long as well, but I didn't know if they were actually going to step that far and bring the documentaries back in. And the documentaries they're different. There was a different feel, a different layout to how these documentaries were made, these documentaries are presented to you, rather than how they were presented to you with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I can chalk this up to the fact that they've already showed you how everything was made in Middle-earth, how Middle-earth came to be, the adaptation from the story onwards. What else is there really to show where you're not going to be repeating yourself? So what they focused on with this is they focused a lot on the cast and how their production went, because Hobbit was kind of in production limbo for a while. because the rights for the film of The Hobbit were owned between Warner Brothers and MGM, and they couldn't come up with a deal for the longest time. Pre-production had begun, money was being spent, sets were being designed, sculpts were being made, character costumes were being perfected, all before this film even had the green light to start filming. So you get to see all this in behind the scenes, and you get to see, just the reasons why Guillermo del Toro had to leave the project. And I understand, and I do not blame him at all, especially considering, he leaves the project and we get an absolute masterpiece that is Pacific Rim. So I understand his reasonings for that. It's sad to see him go, but it's also, I'm happy that Peter Jackson stepped back in and took the film over. And you can see that this is a lot harder. It shows clearly there was a 10-year gap between The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Especially when you see, yes, it's all perfectly clear to see Christopher Lee as Saruman there, sitting in the Council of Elrond scene, which is one of the extended scenes, by the way. Or Council of the Guardians of Middle-earth, I think would be a better way of putting that scene. But he couldn't come down to New Zealand for that. They took parts of the set and a whole lot of green screen to London to meet him. And it looked that just the ability of putting on the costume and walking in this costume seemed very taxing for him. And that's, it's unfortunate when you see masterful actors and their age is starting to show. It's really unfortunate. But, c'est la vie, this is part of life, people get old. I'm happy to see that he returned for this. I'm happy to see that the Saruman we knew came back in. And he was completely fantastic as Saruman for this. Another thing that we got to see is the first thing that they shot. The very first thing that they got rid of and got out of the way quickly was Andy Serkis's performance as Gollum. And even that was very taxing on Andy Serkis. But the reason they wanted to get that out of the way first, that was their first 2 weeks of production, was getting Andy's scenes as Gollum shot, is because Andy was second unit director, and they needed to free him up to start doing the second unit. And I like the way that they timed that out. I actually really like the fact that they gave Andy Serkis the second unit performance, and he talks about that in the documentaries. It is... I have been laughing. I've watched the documentaries today and the film today. And I have been laughing quite often throughout this. Just what happens when you've got all these people dressed up in costumes and left alone. What crazy stuff does come out. You do see a little bit more, right near the end of the documentaries, they start to show you parts from Desolation of Smaug, parts from whatever the third edition is going to be called, possibly, War of the Five Armies, I'm not sure. But you start to see little hints and tidbits, and then they stop you. So the last 10 minutes, they give you slight little teases, and then they stop. So that was nice to see. I didn't recognize some of these characters when they had their makeup on, and I feel really, really bad for not recognizing one of them. And that would be the character of Radagast. With that makeup on, I didn't see him as anything else other than Radagast. But he sounded familiar to me. And, maybe I should have paid closer attention to the credits, maybe his name should have struck out at me more. But it wasn't until just recently, now that, the Doctor Who 50th anniversary has happened, I have now clued in. Sylvester McCoy was one of the Doctors, and that was, when I saw him there out of makeup, I'm just like, that's the Doctor. Oh, wait, the Doctor's playing Radagast? I can't believe I didn't notice this! So, I kind of got a feeling I'm going to have to turn in my nerd card and burn it for this very reason, that I didn't recognize the name Sylvester McCoy right off the bat. I probably should have, but I've watched more of the newer stuff of Doctor Who, not the original run of Doctors. I've watched more from Christopher Eccleston on, so I can spot the old Doctors from specials and everything, but that's pretty much about it. I'm trying to work back through the series, but, trying to find all the episodes to watch is really tricky. Anyways, off topic, back to The Hobbit. Hobbit time. So, I said that the reason I didn't buy this right away when it came out, because, this lovely little package right here, this has been out in stores for 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. And I didn't pick it up because I was waiting. I was waiting for the one set. Now, I missed when Lord of the Rings first came into theater, or first came out onto these Blu-ray editions. First of all, I wasn't buying them on Blu-ray at the time because I didn't have a Blu-ray player. I was buying the DVDs, and even then, I wasn't able to get the collector's versions of the DVDs because I just couldn't find them. My closest thing to do was get the extended editions. But I found it in stores, and I'm now to say I'm the proud owner of the collector's edition of The Hobbit. And here we go. This is the reason why I got it. This is the statuette that you get. It's actually sculpted by a gentleman at Weta Workshop. I'll check the bottom on this for in a second to give you his name. But this sculpt, this is what I paid the extra little bit of money for. It's because I wanted this piece. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I wanted something extra. So, here we go. You can see the information right here on the bottom. Riddles of the Dark, collectible figurine. There's the sculptor's signature and the Weta website if you wanted to check it out. Quite a hefty weight to it, but it sits perfectly on a shelf once you sit it down. It doesn't have any wobble to it. It's got the nice foam feet on the bottom to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Now, artist detailings. It's not I wouldn't give this, a perfect 100% score for the detail in the painting. It's certainly not a... I'm forgetting his name. It's certainly not a 100% piece, but this is a solid 80 out of 100. This is a solid 80% detail work done. There's not very many smudged lines or, painting hair on skin when it shouldn't be there. The details are where they should be. And these characters, Gollum clearly looks like Gollum, and Bilbo does look like Bilbo. It could have been slightly better, but at the same time, for this sculpt, I know it's better than some of the other sculpts that have come out for the DVD set, so I'm perfectly happy with this. This is a fantastic piece, and it's going to have a perfect spot sitting on my shelf next to my 50th anniversary edition of the novel, and maybe I'll put the Blu-rays up there right now, I don't know. Right now they're sitting over on my shelf. But, if you've been waiting, if you're a fan of The Lord of the Rings, and you've been waiting for the extended edition of The Hobbit to come out, go out, pick it up. Now's the time, because the collector's editions are out if you want to try and pick them up, and especially now with it being Christmas, almost every store is going to have collector's boxes stacked up for sale, because this is when they're going to sell. Now, you're going to have to prepare yourself for a long haul. I started early this morning, and it's been a long haul, probably about a 12-hour run of checking everything out, watching everything, and hopefully the 3D looks good. Hopefully it does. For those of you who have a 3D TV, fantastic. The set comes with the 3Ds. Hopefully it'll look good for you. The standard Blu-ray looks fantastic for me. I'm only watching it on an 18.4-inch laptop screen, but that screen is full 1080p, and it looked beautiful. I have it hooked into a surround sound system, so it sounded amazing. It's a very good representation. I do like the extended scenes. There's a couple extra cameos in there. Most notably that I spotted was Dan Henna, one of the set designers. Well, he's got all the long, scraggly gray hair, so they put him in costume to play Old Took. And you actually got to see one of Old Took's parties. And a hilarious little childlike Bilbo whacking Gandalf around the knees with a wooden sword. That was kind of amusing. And with all the other scenes that you see, all the extended bits and pieces, that extra 13 minutes, I didn't think it would change the story that The Hobbit tells as much as it did, but oh boy, did it ever make a difference to just, especially how The Hobbit started up and got you into it. It just, there's now a darker tone. There's this darker hint, like a hinting of darkness to come. And that shows up at the very beginning of the film now, whereas previously it was more lighthearted. It's a good watch. Good acquisition. You have to pick this up if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. I fully recommend it. And, you know, maybe you don't like the extended edition after all. Well, if you don't like the extended edition after all, you were probably like me and got the theatrical edition when it came out from theaters anyways because you couldn't wait to watch it again. So, till my next review, and actually I'll be able to let you know what my next review is right here. I'm going to slip off into a little bit of a... It's time to go and put on some anime. We'll slip off down to some anime, and it's time to watch something that has been critically acclaimed, and I'll let you know my true feelings about it. Coming up next is Akira, the 25th anniversary edition on Blu-ray. Till then, everyone, take care, have yourself a great night. Nerds of the North out.